Do you love the light that gilds the late-day lines carrying conversations along the road between the poles, east to west, north to south, that underscores the undersides of gulls, wings outspread as they sail between the waves and wide ocean clouds, that bathes the upturned faces of shingled summer and gabled autumn houses, grateful for another rising morning. The lovely, love-worthy light. Welcome to the latest floating poetry broadcast, and thank you for leaning in again or for the first time to show 138 in my ongoing weekly series, coming to you live from the light-filled, lighthoused coast of Rhode Island. The last show of the year, where we covered a multitude and plenitude of themes, from hope, doubt, and courage, to the essential, to looking in the mirror, and much more. Well, this is your poet and poetorialist, Colin Goedecke, a voice for living our days more fully, more alively, more poetically. In broadcast 137, we felt the earth, explored, bringing our outer and inner senses, our sentience, to experience it more intimately. This extraordinary planet we earthlings belong to, live all our days and dreams on. Its wild aliveness, its innocence and consciousness, its wonderment and its nourishment. This week, living in the light, bathing in, beholding, appreciating everything purely light-filled, light-giving. Nature's light, the clear light of consciousness, your light, your deep inner radiance, and the reflected glow of other kindling spirits. And yes, celebrating the gifts of all of it. So let's trip some light fantastic together in what I hope you find to be illuminating rays of cultural commentary, poetry, inquiry, and shared discovery. And maybe we'll start with this piece of mine. It's on John Marin's watercolor painting, Sunspots, Cape Split, Maine, 1920. It's a painting that I believe still is at the Metropolitan Museum in New York City. A sun-baubled sea. Off the coarse point of another time, an unfaded ocean verges out in caps and crests of cobalt, indigo, turquoise. Past one small bleach-sailed boat, toward a streaking sky where the sun becomes baubles of chrome yellow, rose madder, viridian, and cerulean that float above the watercolor surface, that float inside my watercolored eyes. Walter MacDonald, Catching the Light at Lake Raven. We are fishing deep water, finding the spine of the sun tied to our lines like anchors. Each time we reel them in heavy from far down under, the bright lures break the surface, dazzling, as if they caught the light down there and dragged it spinning and dripping. Thank you, Walter MacDonald. Catching the Light at Lake Raven. A poem from Killarney, Northern Ontario, Ontario Shield, August 2012. The White Hills of La Cloche. Once cloud-high mountains, shaped and worn from hundreds of millions of rainfalls, windfalls, frosts, rounded now into high white hills, all anciently minerally grained. Fine white hats of quartzite, brimmed and bowed in cedar and pine, whose towering crowns catch each sun and sunset, each first light, moonlight, waterlight. Painting with Light, from Central Park, New York City, July 2016. Painting with brushes and washes, gouaches of John Marin's sea light, Monet Giverny light, Matisse Odalisque, and Gauguin Te Aa no Ariois light. With Rembrandt face light, Vermeer northern window light, with Constable cloud light, Winslow Homer Maine, Bermuda sun, wind, and watercolored light. Caroline Finkelstein, Seeing the Light. The light falls on the cup and the plate, fluted spoons, the blue and the milk, salt, the half-eaten egg, the table, someone half dreaming. Light falls on the clock. Light falls on our uncles, the fish, on disguise, on sleight of hand, on doctors with shaky investments. It falls on the mess of the willow, mistakes in the garden, too many roses, on children allergic to bees, their fathers in terror through summer, on a body all out of breath. Light plays on the righteous, on waste, on the harvest of insistent arrangers, on obsession, on justification, that dance designed in the mind. In the water, light copies the reeds bending and weaving, and it falls on the roofs of houses, little houses resting on ground that was, just moments ago, submerged by the sea. Light travels that fast. It falls on me. Just moments ago, I had no vision at all. Thank you, Caroline Finkelstein. From Joseph Stroud's collection, Everything That Rises. Wonderful collection. Here's just two small pieces of this poem called What Holds Against Chaos. Our mind is invisible, but the brain pulses with energy, neural synapses weaving our thoughts in a web of light. Delotre at Vézelay discovered the secret of light. A midsummer sun through clerestory windows, illuminated terraces of fire leading the eye to the infinite. A neutrino, traveling at the speed of light, passes clean through the inner galaxy of our body, through molecules, through the sun system of an atom, without impact, leaving no trace. Thank you, Joseph Stroud. And how about this from Catching the Light, the Entwined History of Light and Mind by the poetic physicist Arthur Zajonc. This was very intriguing and apropos, so here's a bit of it. Besides an outer light and eye, sight requires a, quote, inner light, one whose luminance complements the familiar outer light and transforms raw sensation into meaningful perception. Light touches all aspects of our being, revealing a part of itself in each encounter. How have we changed this thing called light through the lights of our own consciousness? In the mingling of nature and mind arises an understanding of the life of light. The light of imagination will occupy half of our history because of its significance for both the ancient world and poetry and the present world and science. No matter how brilliant the day, if we lack the formative, artistic power of imagination, we become blind, both figuratively and literally. We need a light within as well as daylight without for vision, poetic or scientific, sublime or common. The mind is subtly and usually unconsciously active in sight, constantly forming and reforming the world we see. Thus, we participate in sight. Very interesting read. Well, as you lean in here, as you listen, think, and feel into living in the light, some questions. How do you live in the light? And where do you live in the light? How does it bring you more alive? What are the most vital or valuable sources of light that pour into you, or over you, or through you, and that pour from you? How keenly, actively versus passively, aware are you of the sunlight, the moonlight, the light of the night stars, the light from above reflecting on the waters of oceans, lakes, rivers? Very consciously and viscerally connected, not spectating, but actively participating in these flows of energy. Are you aware your body constantly and incredibly communicates with itself photonically? So you actually are a body of light. Then we speak as we must of inner light, the luminance of our deeper self, the great flame of our being. When did you first become aware of your own inner sun? What about the inner sun of someone else? What was it like to behold it? What feeds yours, sustains it, expands it? What experiences in life of any kind, person to person, or in nature, or otherwise, could you call luminous or radiant, however fleeting? Can you pause right now, close your eyes a moment, and picture someone's lighted heart, or lighted eyes, or lighted soul, shining, shining, glowing? Now, picture your own. Take that image in, drink it in, breathe it in. Can you imagine a world, or even a whole day, without any light at all? I surely can. So much of my life as a creator, curator, and presenter of poetic experiences has to do with outer and inner light, helping others see and feel it, fill themselves with it, drink from it, daily and gladly. So, is there any reason to take the pure natural light that graces your life, every one of our lives, for granted? Who on earth would ever want to live without it? Blessings on the light that makes your life, my life, all life livable, beautiful, joyful, possible. Yes. Outer and inner. Outer light, the light around us, that surrounds and affects us subtly to profoundly, bathes and suffuses us quietly, beautifully. Inner light, the light that lanternly shines from our beings, from our eyes, sometimes sun-like, sometimes moon-like. This light we share with the light of the stars we're made of, come from, wonder on. Outer and inner, the changing light, lightness we can emit and witness of the dawn to dusk skies, the still and moving clouds, the waters of the open seas, nature's seasons, of our touching and being touched, our speaking, places of feeling, ways of moving through the days, through the world, of our loving, of our dreaming. Outer and inner. I was musing on myriad kinds of light, as maybe you've begun to yourself, and cardinal forms of it, and aside from the natural ones, thought of the most vital, historical, mythical, and meaningful ones made by man. And this was a lead in piece for an open-air experience that I created and presented in 2019 for the Hopewell, New Jersey Tour des Arts. Around the fire, where the light dances on a circle of faces, where the heat toddies the spirits and all close-gathered bodies, where, since epochs and eras long before Native Americans honored the four winds under new and full moons, before the Zoroastrians lit the great fire at Yazda that glows on millennia later, before the Druids, Bedouins, even before Apollo and Vulcan, Ogun, Fuji, Ani, and Granus, Pele and Mishquatl. When early man made fires in the green dark hearts of forests, in the open mouths of sheltering caves, where, across all human time, voices, songs, music, drumbeats, and heartbeats rose with the sparks, cinders, and smoke into the sky, toward the sun by day, toward the distant listening stars by night, of lilting kinds, offering, celebrating, and other anciently sacred, wordful and wordless kinds, where some of our own ancestors once surely stood or sat, meditated, chanted, or danced with wild abandon, naked or painted, or hatted and coated, till the last of the embers died out, gave way to the great silence and stillness of the earth around them, of the vast and mysterious world folded and unfolding around them, where we can gather, go further in, invite and embrace our own kindling, crackling, blazing from the center of our beings. Let forth our own fire to reach and touch, light, and warm every circle of our lives, our living, all our making, all our loving. Round the fire. Reflecting on the light inside other people, as I was asking you in one of those questions. Light we can see, the more awake and open we are to the world around us. It includes the people around us. Here's one of those. Another brother. This is a poem for a dear friend and soul brother of mine in California, Greg Truman. Another brother. One you didn't know you had. Until one day he appeared, smiling brightly from the heart, at a table in a cafe, and you felt kindred, immediately and delightfully connected. And years later you realized, divinized, he was another brother of the soul, of the source of original light you both came from. His shining so fully, so clearly, so joyfully and fraternally. I send that out to you and to him. He loves listening in, so maybe he's listening right now as I speak. Sent with love. On the inner light that makes us human, the legendary science writer Lauren Isley, on the relationship between nature and human nature. This is from his 1960 book, The Firmament of Time. Here's one of the passages I loved here in that. Looking so, across the centuries and the millennia, toward the animal men of the past, one can see a faint light, like a patch of sunlight moving over the dark shadows on a forest floor. It shifts and widens. It winks out. It comes again, but it persists. It is the human spirit, the human soul, however transient, however faulty men may claim it to be. In its coming, man had no part. It merely came, that curious light, and man, the animal, sought to be something that no animal had been before. Cruel he might be, vengeful he might be, but there had entered into his nature a curious, wistful gentleness and courage. It seemed to have little to do with survival, for such men died over and over. They did not value life compared to what they saw in themselves, that strange inner light which has come from no man knows where, and which was not made by us. It has followed us all the way from the age of ice, from the dark borders of the ancient forest into which our footprints vanish. Man may grow until he towers to the skies, but without this light he is nothing, and his place is nothing. Even as we try to deny the light, we know that it has made us, and what we are without it remains meaningless. Thank you, Lauren Isley. Many other good thoughts in his book. As I meditated on the change of light back in time, 1999, spring, Kiowa Island, South Carolina. Light cycle. Coal to slate, to glacier, to blue, to sand, to saffron, to blood orange, to rose, to pearl, to teal, to indigo, to coal. What about the lights of the heavens? Planets, stars. Each night, there they are. And their spangles, sparkles, glows. Sometimes marvelous sparks, something I always look for. And when I'm usually not looking, there they are. This was on Deerfield Road, Sag Harbor, New York, June 2016. Shooting star. I awake widely in the silent hours, while the rest of the house close to bay and sea is dreaming. Stand, turn my face to the open window, and night sky spread over the silhouettes of treetops, blue on black. Look at the constellations floating round their moorings, and wish for a shooting star to loose, which suddenly lights out, streaking wondrously, zinc whitely through the dark, through a newly hopeful place in the center of my heart. Shooting star. The Moonlight by Noah Buchholz, translated from American Sign Language by John Lee Clark. It's a first. I've never known of a poet who wrote in sign language. That night the moon rose in the window. Its light touched the pane and spread over the floor. The girls climbed out of their beds and gathered in the glow, where their hands came alive. Their chatter filled their chests with such gladness it flowed out past the sentry girl at the door and down the corridor until it struck the matron's ears. She rocked forward, enraged, and thundered up the corridor. The sentry girl gave the alarm. They flew for their beds. The matron burst in. Her arms swung and connected. A girl dropped. The hand of the moon went to the girl, tapping her on the shoulder, tapping to no avail. It withdrew, gliding back to the window and out. When the sun came up, its blaze seething into the floor, the girls gathered again at the window. They watched as the gardener dug a hole. His shovel thrust firmly in the ground. He lifted a covered figure and let drop. Its arms were crossed as it trembled to the bottom, tumbled to the bottom. The gardener grimaced and covered the hole. That night the moon rose in the window. Its light touched the pane and spread over the floor. The girls climbed out of their beds and gathered in the glow, where their hands came alive. The Moonlight by Noah Buchholz. Thank you. Beautiful. New to me. home from my exhibition of theater on paper, Behind the Curtain, spring 2018. Sun and moon, receiving and reflecting. The light of the solar, the light of the lunar, the outer and inner sun and moon that illuminate the days, nights, and glories of our cosmic bodies, as they rise and set so faithfully, so generously. Sun and moon. And not just humans, we humans who are embodiers of light, and often as possible, great expressors of light, sharers of light, but other living creatures, like whales, carriers of light. They swam inside the collars of stiff-shirted men, the skirts and corsets of well-contained ladies, the silk folds of tightly rolled umbrellas were worn round bodies and held over heads through rain, sun, seasons, the bones of mighty to behold creatures, and all their sacred oil that flamed street lamps for carriages and coachmen, lit night lamps for readers, for lovers, fed ticking clocks on tall mantles, essential fuel, rare as the milk of queens, spilled wantonly, unwantedly, from the ancient rovers of the oceans, from unfathomably many innocent carriers of light, life, song. Honoring to the whales, carriers of light. Billy Collins has this poem I chose for us. I love how he observes and engages all kinds of light as he travels a landscape, driving through the light. I woke up in the dark this morning to drive home through the hills of Pennsylvania. I scraped off the windows of the parked car, the season's first ghost sheen of frost, and now I am out on the shining road, observing how the earliest sun lies flat against the earth, watching the oblique light as it tracks down inch by inch from the highest trees on the ridges of the hills and gradually fills the contours of the land. If I had the whole day, I would follow it as it moved down into the shadowed valleys and later into the windows of the houses that were built along the rivers, and finally into the low rivers themselves, which are the last places for the light to visit. I would watch as it dappled the still pools that hold the suspended fish and sparkled the surface out in the middle where the river is strongest, where it flows along with its eyes wide open like a swimmer who has swum so long she has forgotten her name and never needs to come up for air again. That is how I began the long drive home, thinking about the visitations and the timing of light as dawn poured into the car and pierced the vapor rising from the cup I held. Thinking about the slow annunciation of this day, the mysteries of the places I will never see, and about the long, watery body of that nameless swimmer. Thank you, Billy Collins. I've not read that one before. I'm happy to bring that forth. What a gift we get to have, in our days and nights, and have incandescing inside us, coming from us, yes? Grace Schulman, blessed is the light. Blessed is the light that turns to fire, and blessed the flames that fire makes of what it burns. Blessed the inexhaustible sun, for it feeds the moon that shines but does not burn. Praised be hot vapors in earth's crust, for they force up mountains that explode as molten rock and cool like love remembered. Holy is the sun that strikes sea, for surely as water burns, life and death are one. Holy the sun, maker of change, for it melts ice into water that bruises mountains, honing peaks and carving gullies. Sacred is the mountain that promises permanence but changes, planed by rock slides, cut by avalanche, crushed, eroded, leached for minerals. Sacred the rock that spins for centuries before it shines, governed by gravity, burning into sight near Earth's orbit, for it rises falling, surviving night. Behold the arcs your eyes make when you speak. Behold the hands, white fire. Branches of pine holding votive candles, they command, disturbed by wind, the fire that sings in me. Blessed is whatever alters, turns, revolves, just as the gods move when the mind moves them. Praised be the body, our bodies, that lie down and open and rise, falling in flame. Thank you, Grace Schulman. Beautiful. Blessed is the light. I come back often and here to the choices we can make of all kinds, to greater states of beingness, of wholeness, openness, deeperness, greater aliveness, especially paths we choose to move toward or away from. Take the light path, the light of foot path, the light of heart and mind path, a bright, inviting, life-dappled, love-leafed path, a soul-whole soul path, sunlighted by day, moon-lanterned by night, open to you, ready for you, calling you there. The light path. From Audre Lorde's book, Lorde, A Burst of Light and Other Essays. I want to live the rest of my life, however long or short, with as much sweetness as I can decently manage, loving all the people I love and doing as much as I can of the work I still have to do. I am going to write fire until it comes out my ears, my eyes, my nose holes, everywhere, until it's every breath I breathe. I'm going to go out like an effing meteor. Wow. Thank you, Audre Lorde. He was the great poet, essayist, feminist, and civil rights champion. Lived from 1934 to 92. It's from A Burst of Light and Other Essays. What teachers, dear listeners, did you have that lit up your mind, your imagination? Here's Jean Murray Walker's piece, Light. And then there was Mr. Luhmann, the teacher whose death they announced one Tuesday. He vowed to donate $10,000 to whichever of us named our first kid Igor Stravinsky. We should send him a telegram, he said. He'd cut off his thumbs for culture. He'd be happy to dive 5 stories naked from the window of English to make us understand to be or not to be. He knew we thought he had no life, that he was a cardboard cutout they wheeled from the closet every morning. And really, what was he but the longing he wanted to instill in us for the finer things? He was nothing but fumes that lingered after the last note of the Brahms Requiem. He dodged through subjects like a bumper car at a carnival. He had to teach us everything. He begged us not to smoke, to see the Nutcracker. He claimed Hamlet was the only character smart enough to have written the play he's in. When the bell rang, he was still talking about Queen Elizabeth, how Lord Burghley brought a 10-pound note to the coronation to buy back the British crown from God, who is the true king. We unfolded our bright limbs from his old desks and filed past him to math. The last thing I heard him say before he met the train at the blind crossing was how in Egypt, when the dead knock to get into heaven, if their good deeds equal the weight of one feather, they are let in. Light by Jean Murray Walker. Beautiful. Another good one. Hope you enjoyed that choice. Well, a poem of mine from Greece from the summer of 2012, Greek islands in the Cyclades. It speaks to my poetic arts that speak to ways we can channel and beacon our light. So the title is O Pyrsos Mu, My Torch. My torch, O Pyrsos Mu, is the pen that illuminates the page, the hand that guides each arriving word, the opened eyes that show me the world as it was, as it is, and now becomes, the eyes that light the life passages I wander and wonder through, that reveal the beauty and majesty of free, old, and fellow souls. It's the flame of my heart that dispels the darkness that burns with innocence. This next piece struck me, and I hope you, what from earliest times man was moved to render. This is the Anglo-Irish poet Eamon Grennan. The cave painters. Holding only a handful of rushlight, they pressed deeper into the dark, at a crouch, until the great rock chamber flowered around them, and they stood in an enormous womb of flickering light and dark light, a place to make a start. Raised hands cast flapping shadows over the sleeker shapes of radiance. They've left the world of weather and panic behind them and gone on in, drawing the dark in their wake, pushing as one pulse to the core of stone. The pigments mixed in big shells are crushed ore, petals and pollens, berries, and the binding juices oozed out of chosen barks. The beasts begin to take shape from hands and feather tufts, soaked in ochre, manganese, madder, mallow white, stroking the live rock, letting slopes and contours mold those forms from chance, coaxing rigid dips and folds and bulges to lend themselves to necks, bellies, swelling haunches, a forehead, or a twist of horn, tails and manes curling to a crazy gallop. Intent and human, they attach the mineral, vegetable, animal realms to themselves, inscribing the one unbroken line everything depends on, from that impenetrable center to the outer intangibles of light and air, even the speed of the horse, the bison's fear, the arc of gentleness that this big-bellied cow arches over its spindling calf, or the lancing dance of death that bristles out of the buck's struck flank. On this one line they leave a beak-headed human figure of sticks and one small, chalky human hand. We'll never know if they worked in silence like people praying, the way our monks illuminated their own dark ages in cross-hatched rocky cloisters, where they contrived a binding labyrinth of lit affinities to spell out in nature's lace and fable their mindful, blinding sixth sense of a god of shadows, or whether, like birds tracing their great bloodlines over the globe, they kept a constant gossip up of praise, encouragement, complaint. It doesn't matter. We know they went with guttering rushlight into the dark, came to terms with the given world, must have had, as their hands moved steadily by spiderlight, one desire we'd recognize. They would, before going on, beyond this border zone, this nowhere that is now here, leave something upright and bright behind them in the dark. The Cave Painters. Thank you, Eamon Grennan. A love poem from the island of Kea, sitting high above the Aegean one August day. Lambo. I shine. I shine by the so blue sea. I shine with mouthfuls of cold wine. I shine with salt-scented wind on my outstretched body. I shine when I close my eyes and feel your hand in mine, feel all your love flowing inside. On a day like this, I can only shine. Interesting how there are these touchstones, that take you back to different shining moments in your life, written or just remembered. There's a poem I would love to read you, but I'm going to save it for another time. But you could look it up. It's another poem by Eamon Grennan, Eamongrennan. It's called Streak of Light. So maybe look that up on your own, and maybe another program it'll fit in somehow. Well, we do have the rapturous light of the body, the light of the heart, especially in love, and the sheer rapture of the earth's theater of light. Here's Alice Jones' Light. The morning when I first noticed the leaves starting to color, early orange and backlit, I think how rapture doesn't vanish, merely fades into the background, waits for those moments between moments. I think this, and the door opens. The street takes on its glistening look, bay fog lifting, patches of sun on sycamore, yellow sea. I am in again, and swimming. Thank you, Alice Jones. Jane Hirshfield meeting the light completely. Even the long-beloved was once an unrecognized stranger. Just so, the chipped lip of a blue-glazed cup, blown field of a yellow curtain, might also, flooding and falling, ruin your heart. A table painted with roses, an empty clothesline. Each time the found world surprises, that is its nature. And then, what is said by all lovers? What fools we were not to have seen. Thank you, Jane Hirshfield. That's from her collection, Poetry of Presence. Who are the great glowing beings in your world, your life? Here's one of mine. Thomas Felix. There are men who shine through the world like radiant suns, whose voices resound in the ears like fresh rainfalls, wind songs, bird calls, whose loving faces fill hearts, spirits to the brim, who show us how beautifully a soul can be, can grow, can flow and flower through this life. And you, yes, you are one. Well, we couldn't appreciate the light without the contrast of dark and shadow, could we? And their interplays. So they serve other purposes. Before There's Light, a poem from La Habra, California, February 2017. Before there's light, there's only shadow, intangible forms, shapes and silhouettes, lines and outlines, only traces, intimations, suspensions of things, an intriguing there but not all there-ness, until the light of day fills in the picture, fills out the substance, dispels the nightshade, the noir, the elusive and illusory, pauses the shadow plays for another day. James Baldwin, writer James Baldwin, back in time, from one of his essays, wrote this: "One discovers the light in darkness. That is what darkness is for. But everything in our lives depends on how we bear the light. It is necessary while in darkness to know that there is a light somewhere, to know that in oneself, waiting to be found, there is a light." Richard Crashaw. But men love darkness rather than light. The world's light shines, shine as it will. The world will love its darkness still. I doubt, though, when the world's in hell, it will not love its darkness half so well. Many of you would know Leonard Cohen, what he said about there's a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in. And this is from The Marginalian. He's talking about democracy and its redemptions, in part. I did not know he was ordained as a Buddhist monk. He was trained as a poet, and he's quite a poet. He was. Still is in my book. He's still in the molecules. They say here, our patron saint of sorrow and redemption wrote songs partway between philosophy and prayer, songs radiating the kind of prayerfulness which Simone Weil celebrated as, quote, the rarest and purest form of generosity. One of his most beloved lyric lines from the song Anthem, that took him a decade to write, remains what is perhaps the most meaningful message for our troubled and troubling times. There is a crack in everything, and that's how the light gets in. It springs from a central concern of his life and work, one which he revisited in various guises across various songs, including in his song Suzanne, where he writes, look among the garbage and the flowers, there are heroes in the seaweed. And in the iconic Hallelujah, there's a blaze of light in every word. It doesn't matter which you heard, the holy or the broken Hallelujah. The toast to him, that beautiful spirit. Here's a call to our humanity, the shared light of it, the light we can unite extraordinarily, especially in these foreboding, bewildering times of ours, for so many. Our humanity, what we belong to, what we can point to out there around us, and what a singular gift, our innate sentience, deeper humanness, shared with 8 billion other souls and bodies, what we can rise to in here, if and when we choose to or are moved to. Summon the truer and fuller humanity that, whether clearly or obscurely, resides so surely within each of us, whether it's eager or reticent, lost or longed for, sleeping or awakening. I remember ceremonies that began in the dark of a church or a country field, a first candle being lit from a source, and from that first lighting to the other held by the person beside, then each holder in turn letting their flame light the next and next until all were aglow, until we soon cascadingly formed one immense body of light, a bonfire of human kindled kind, reflecting spirits, reflected in eyes, beaconing a remembering out, sending a hope-filled illumination out into the unseen and unknown. The same way the flame of your humanity and mine, instead of flickering alone, can be lit, fed, combined, and enlarged, can join the wicks, the rising spirits of all those who, from where we stand, we cannot see or know, but can feel in the center of our chests. Enough to create a great forest, a great sea, family of uniting, igniting humanity, a shared light rise, the greatest that people of any time in history or memory have ever known. A conscious joining, generous emanating of human light, benevolent light, that brings wanted, beyond needed solace, strength, and wordless togetherness forth, to soothe the heart and smooth the future of the trembling world. The End by Mark Strand. Not every man knows what he shall sing at the end, watching the pier as the ship sails away, or what it will seem like when he's held by the sea's roar, motionless there at the end, or what he shall hope for once it's clear that he'll never go back. When the time is past to prune the rose or caress the cat, when the sunset torching the lawn and the full moon icing it down no longer appear, not every man knows what he'll discover instead, when the weight of the past leans against nothing, and the sky is no more than remembered light, and the stories of Cirrus and Cumulus come to a close, and all the birds are suspended in flight. Not every man knows what is waiting for him, or what he shall sing, when the ship he is on slips into darkness, there at the end. I might tell you more of this story another time, but years back, 20-odd years back, my mother passed away rather suddenly, and a month after she died, I was sitting in my living room one afternoon, reading, and I looked up, and there she was, a visitation, as if behind a waterfall. And it was very powerful, because I had been suffering, and the suffering, when she appeared and told me it was her suffering, took it away completely in a moment. And asker of questions that I am, I decided to take the opportunity to ask her what it was like where she was. And it was quite a marvelous story that she told me about it, the experience of it. But I asked her what she ate there. What did she feed on? And she said, we drink the light from the flowers. How amazing was that in itself? I want to tell you that. Maybe more about that another time. But let me, as we come to our last sharings and musings now this week, and the end of this year, till the new year, here's our great poet Rilke, Sonnets to Orpheus, Part 2, Number 12. Want the change, Be inspired by the flame where everything shines as it disappears. The artist, when sketching, loves nothing so much as the curve of the body as it turns away. What locks itself in sameness has congealed. Is it safer to be gray and numb? What turns hard becomes rigid and is easily shattered. Pour yourself out like a fountain. Flow into the knowledge that what you are seeking finishes often at the start and with ending begins. Every happiness is the child of a separation it did not think it could survive, and Daphne, becoming a laurel, dares you to become the wind. Thank you, Rilke. Well, we had just last week, a week back, the winter solstice. Talked about that in the last program, too. It's all about light, so much of it. And all relative to us, our place and possibilities here on Earth. And this was a different ode for the winter solstice from 2019. As above and below. As the sun and gyring heavens, the ancient constellations above, balance with the turning earth, this terra firma we call home below. Maybe, in their solstice pausing and stilling, we can find our own place and piece of balance between them and within. Feel the deeper harmony of our being, our equally remarkable and faithful natures. Welcome this season of our life, the rhyme of our living, and a sense of our next unfoldings, whatever they may be, however clear or mysterious. As we follow through all familiar and unknown bareness, darkness, the light of our own bright gathered inner stars. Spread the warmth of the truest, tenderest parts of our hearts. Lean in to the comforting grounding of our earthly bodies. As we wayfare out, singly and together, toward more sun-long days, gentle springs, and footloose, time-soft summers. Jack Kerouac said, "I want a blaze of light to flame in me forever in a timeless, dear love of everything. And why should I pretend to want anything else?" On the spring equinox, New York, March 2002, incandescence. I shine through the city streets like a 1,000,000-watt bulb. My soul glows. My soul glows like an ember. My heart flows like a river. Here's a piece I just composed on the 24th December, Christmas Eve. That I hope speaks to each of us in the grace and power of the luminous. On the eve. It begins on the eve of Christmas present, wreathed with reveries of Christmas past and wonderings about those yet to come. It begins many eves, under the eaves of the house of the self. When I celebrate quietly this gift of life, this expression of spirit wrapped in a body lit from within, that can light some part of the surrounding world when darkness falls upon it, or can enlarge, enrich its places of luminance. When I see how I and others can bring kindling light, welcome light, reassuring light to even one sputtering soul in need, on days and eves like this. Be your light, friends, all your light. Be a man, a woman, a child of light, a bearer of light, a kindler and keeper of light that beacons in all directions, sweeps over dark seas, stony shores, the faces of vessels, of sailors, of known and unknown voyagers. And last for now, my friends, last for now, feel all the light of note. Feel all the light falling. Meditation on the autumnal equinox, but a meditation for any time. Let all the light fall today in a rare, receiving way, fully, equally, wholly into your hemispheres, your north and south, your left and right brain, your masculine and feminine, conscious and unconscious, actual and potential self. Pause. Close your sunlit eyes and slowly, slowly breathe. Open. Widen. Feel the life-giving, life-renewing rays enter the center, the equator of your body, your being, bringing all parts of your inner world into great balance, bathing all parts of you in greater warmth and health, brightening, lightening your places, crevices, passages of darkness, sadness, hiddenness, shadow. Let all the new light falling, streaming, seeking, find and fill you this day with a keener seeing, sense of turning, promise of becoming. Thank you again for leaning in, for feeling in, especially those who've listened across all of 2022. Your faithfulness means a great deal to me, as does all you have drawn from my floating poetry programs, and I hope will as we go forward. Thank you, too, for sharing these broadcasts around with others to enjoy and find inspiration in. And for those of you sending gifts of appreciation for a given broadcast or all the creating and presenting here of these free weekly shows to nourish and uplift a world of hearts, minds, and spirits. If there's a theme you'd like me to speak to, do let me know. My email is colin@thepoetorialist.com. I'd also love to know what your experience was of this show, of living in the light. To send a contribution, you can by Venmo to Fivefold at pipeline, pipeline.com, or by PayPal to me to the same email, or by check and regular mail to me at P.O. Box 1032, Westerly, Rhode Island 02891, or by credit or debit card through my site, thepoetorialist.com, and the Donate tab. Patrons can sponsor or host me at times as a working poet in residence in an agreed place in the world for an agreed time to create a new flight of poetic art and dedicate it to them. Call or email me to explore. Meanwhile, you can hear all the broadcasts online on YouTube on the Floating Poetry playlist. I hope you'll lean in soon again. Until then, dear listeners, may you shine forth from your heart, your mind, your soul. May you open and add daily and gratefully to your radiance. And may you share it freely and fully and love it dearly. The world needs your light. Right now and greatly, vitally, into this soon arriving new year, the world needs all the light we can each and all give it. Goodbye for now, and good spirits.